It was 2 years ago that I met the Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi in a forum. And that was the first time in my life that I had to Google what polymath means. And for those of you who don't know, like I did, apparently it's an expert in multiple subjects. And so, without further ado, out of the many roles that he is also the principal of ethics and governance of artificial intelligence based at Harvard University and MIT Media Lab. Please welcome the Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi.
Good morning. So I'm going to move around. I hate being static. We all wake up with different challenges, and this morning my biggest challenge was walking from my hotel to here and not getting swarmed by tourists thinking I'm a character from Lord of the Rings. I'm delighted to be here, and as I sensed during the opening evening, a tremendous amount of passion and enthusiasm in this room. So it's a privilege to share some thoughts, some ideas with you, and what I'm really looking forward to is the conversation. So I'll keep my presentation rather brief, rather informal, so we can have more time for conversation and perhaps dive a bit deep into certain things. About 35 years ago or so, there was a tremendous sense of what we call techno-optimism that not only plagued the institute that I am part of, but many of the institutions around the world. And the sense of techno-optimism was that technology is going to solve all the crises, that it's going to be sort of this pill of some sort that is magically going to start moving humanity forward. And at least the founders of internet thought so. And when they invented internet, there was a tremendous sense of enthusiasm as to what internet would do. It's going to bring the world closer. It's going to open different forms of accesses around education, around financial equity, around healthcare. And to some degree, yes, internet has done some of it. I presume there are certain people watching me across the ocean today. That is also thanks to internet. However, 35 years down the road, we are at a stage today where we are asking deeper questions around whether our dear civic institutions such as democracy can survive internet, whether it can survive the emerging technologies that we are creating. So a few months ago, I was at the lab with some of these founders of internet and posed the question as to what they thought of their invention. People including Tim Berners-Lee and a couple of others, designers. And the unanimous response at that moment was, we should just shut down the internet. And this was, of course, in the aftermath of the election in the United States. And then the idea was maybe we should build Internet 2.0 with some more scaffolding, some more thinking behind it. As we move into this era of emerging technologies where we design things hoping that it's going to make our lives better, hoping that it might actually change things for better, there are certain considerations and certain challenges that we are already seeing. And one of those technologies that I want to briefly address this morning is artificial intelligence. Now, AI is not a new phenomenon. Conversations on it talk about it, and the buzzword has been there for a period of time. But suddenly, in the last couple of years, AI has become the buzzword. Some people are calling it sort of a new form of messiah that's going to change things again for the better. And there are some who are questioning even whether we should venture into designing such forms of technology, and hence the doomsday scenario and so on. For activism, technology has always served either as an obstruction or as an amplification. And again, it is for up to us to decide how do we want to give the ethical framing around these kinds of emerging technologies so that it can become more of an amplification mechanism for good. The challenge is that much of AI technologies today, the investment comes from private ventures. The governments are interested in AI, but most of it is for the usage of defense. So AI and robotics related phenomena in defense. And the reason I'm bringing some of these challenges up is because in activism, we are not just fighting challenges or problems of the past. We have to also be mindful and aware and anticipate what are going to be the challenges that might be rising up. You see, meaning that will such technologies make our life easy, or will it make our life difficult with regards to its application? So for example, already we have seen deployment of machine learning systems in judicial processes. Now, most of you are aware that in most countries, judicial processes are clogged up systems. In countries like mine in India, you could wait for 15 to 25 years before the case is resolved. In countries like Colombia, where I'm working, the intent is very good. So when they formed the constitution, they said, after the drug war, they decided that anybody who feels that their fundamental right is violated has the legal framework to file for a case that my fundamental right has been violated. As a result, the judicial system sees anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 cases every day. The system is not designed to work through all of these cases. As a result, there's a tremendous amount of backlog that's happening. So everybody in the judicial system is, of course, looking for something that might allow to create more fluidity, more efficiency in the system. The technologies came up and said, sure, here's a machine learning system that might allow you to do that. But however, the machine learning systems that are designed and deployed mostly in North America are trained, just like any form of intelligence. These systems are trained on existing data that gives or portrays certain minority groups in a certain light. You see? So there's the sense of scoring, meaning that when you go in front of a judge and the judge puts in your profile into the system spits a score. And that's a risk score. And based on that risk score, the judge would decide whether to give you bail or not, whether to give you parole or not, or whether to put you straight into incarceration. Now, the challenge is that most of these systems are trained on such biased data on minority demographics that what it has done is that it has internalized the biases of historic data to the point that it is not taking into account any form of new knowledge or new data. But here is the challenge. You see, judges who are trained in some ways to be objective are actually not that objective. In fact, some study shows that depending on what the judges had for lunch, could actually decide whether you get a bail or not, whether you get parole or not. Depending on, given the news of last night, depending on whether your favorite sports team lost or won, can determine a judge's ability to decide whether you're going to get a parole next morning or not. Meaning that judges too are humans, and most judicial schools don't actually train you in emotional regulation. So yes, we claim a level of objectivity, but on one point we could say that machines could have higher level of objectivity than certain humans. However, when machines are trained on biased data, it's very hard to figure out where the discrepancy is, because now the moral agency is a bit diluted, because the judge can simply say, well, I put in all the information into the system yields a score, I have no say in it, I'm just going to rule based on what the risk score is. So what it does is that it creates a kind of abstraction in terms of how judicial decisions are made. And these are systems that are actually deployed today in certain federal courts in the United States. Increasingly, we are beginning to see that there is tremendous amount of bias in terms of the institutionalization of how certain demographic, certain minority demographics especially, are awarded their sentencing. So again, it's an opportunity to make legal system more fluid, but at the same time, if we don't create better ethical framing, if we don't create better ways of deciphering decision-making in machine learning systems, we are simply going to institutionalize the historic biases that humans have developed, that they have nurtured. So that's in the judicial system sense. You come to AI and medicine. Now, there are increasing number of data that shows that doctors too are culturally biased. Doctors too are physicians in their training are also biased in terms of how they examine, for example, female patients versus male patients. Some studies even show that if there are 7 oncology specialists in a room and there is an AI, chances are that AI is going to make better diagnosis than 7 oncology specialists. However, the oncology specialists immediately outcry and deny the diagnosis of the AI system. Why? Because the ego kicks in. I have so many years of expertise. I have so many years of medical training. But imagine if there's a cancer patient in that room, and if there's a slight probability that the 7 oncologists are wrong in how they're diagnosing the patient, what should inform the patient in terms of which treatment route they should take, which treatment route they should go for? You see, these are the challenges that we are seeing with certain kinds of AI systems that are already there. The AI in defense is going to be the next thing. China announced $150 billion of investment, and so the United States followed and announced another $150 billion of investment. Now, the challenge with this industry is that it's moving rapidly. It's moving so fast that even most academic and research institutions have difficult time keeping up with it, let alone governmental institutions which have been historically 10 to 15 years behind technology sector in terms of even designing a proper regulatory framework. But these are the things that make the task of activists, the task of individuals who are looking for civic rights, the task of individuals who are looking to create more enlightened conversations in civic society or foster enlightened conversations in civic society, challenging day by day. But you know, there's an Indian philosopher that I quite admire, Krishnamurti, and he said once that it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. You see, hope for me is not a fluffy term. Hope for me is a game changer. And when we talk about ethics, when we talk about ethical framing, when we talk about ethics being introduced in how we design policies, how we design technology frameworks, how we design technology that individuals interact with on a day-to-day basis, you have to inject it with the sense of hope. You have to inject it with the sense of enthusiasm, hoping that it is going to do something better for humanity at large. And what I mean by humanity at large is that, you see, historically we humans have romanticized the idea that we learn by mistake, or we learn from mistakes. We make a mistake, we learn. And generally, that theory works fine as long as the mistake is an individual's mistake and so on. But at some point, we have to start wondering and now start asking ourselves that what if the scale of this mistake is so large, that the scale of this mistake is so monumental, that it is going to take generations to learn from it. It's going to take generations to even try to come closer to correcting that mistake. So that's why I take a more cautious approach these days, which is that try not to commit that mistake. It's an audacious goal, but the fact is that, again, remember that as an individual level, learning from mistake is a wonderful idea. But from organizational level, institutional level, learning from mistake, especially in this day and age, can be too costly, almost to the point that we cannot recover to the original form. And so, when we talk about this intersection of technology and humanity, ethics needs to play a crucial role. And what I mean by ethics here is not compliance. You see, historically what, again, we have done is that we have attributed all of our ethical decision-making to compliance systems. Let the legal system take care of it. But increasingly, what we are also recognizing that what might be legally right could be morally wrong. And we have witnessed that in many societies. To the point that we have to deeply reflect and ask ourselves that can we simply delegate ethical thinking, can we simply delegate ethical decision-making, ethical framing of things to compliance-based institutions such as the legal system and so on. And this is the challenge, as I said earlier, that governmental systems are generally 10 to 15 years behind designing regulatory frameworks. So as a result, we need more and more activists, more and more individuals who are involved in sort of conversation around promoting civic citizenship to come forward and engage with the world of technology to help design it better. So who are the individuals who are helping design better AI for judicial system? It's the ACLU in the United States. They are the activists who are coming forward. They are the one who caught the mistake on risk scores and so on. Who are the people who are catching errors in medical technologies? Are health caregivers, healthcare providers. They are looking at the challenge and saying, yes, the technology is wonderful in terms of if it works at scale, but these are the challenges, these are the discrepancies that it's facing right now. So technology can be a great ally for us in manifesting our sense of hope in terms of scaling up of our efforts, but at the same time, it can become a great detractor. But we have passed the time when we can say, let's hit a reset button and go back 300 years ago when there was no technology. Actually, life 300 years ago was no better than it was today. So it's a question, again, of how do we reframe? How can we switch the direction of which way we are moving? So I'll take a pause here. This is just to catalyze, so to speak, the conversation, and we can dive deep into any of the topics that the panelists and you guys think of. So, thank you.